The more you listen, the more you know. This is Good Politics with Dr. Wilson and Adam Whiteman.
Welcome back. Our final touches on impeachment.
All right, so let's do something else now. I want to ask the question, what is the precedent of this going forward? What have we learned? Okay, so we just had this impeachment, and I want to ask a very simple question. What have we learned? And in order to look at that, play clip number 4.
Impeachment, as those hearings go public this week. Out from behind closed doors, 3 career diplomats whose testimony appears to connect the dots of a quid pro quo. One Democratic source predicting a blockbuster, with the president's critics hoping the hearings get the public on their side. The strategy? Lose the Latin.
Quid pro quo is one of these things to muddy the works. When you're trying to persuade the American people of something that is really pretty simple, which is that the president acted criminally and extorted, it's probably best not to use Latin words to explain it.
I see it simply as a global Watergate. Back then, you had a president in Richard Nixon who was paranoid, and he delegated to some people to go break into the headquarters and get into a file cabinet to get dirt on a political opponent. That's basically what this president has done on a global basis.
She calls it a global Watergate, and she's also trying to get at, maybe they shouldn't use the term quid pro quo. Is that the lesson here?
In terms of what the lesson is, let's just hold off for 2 seconds, and let's just do this. What I take from this clip is political perception. This is the first key I want to get in terms of this. You'll notice that these people want to see Nixon. They have this imagination of Nixon. Sometimes you have people from this generation, for a certain generation, this Watergate thing was so big to them, so big to their imaginations. And so therefore, that's something that generation wanted to put that picture onto that situation. And you notice that what she says is, this is a global Nixon. What does it mean to say this? Well, Nixon broke in, got opposition research, broke in, and this is what Trump is doing over in Ukraine. He's breaking in.
Trump simply isn't Nixon. I mean, I would love for our listeners to go back and see that episode. It was actual criminal activity.
Exactly. Nothing that Trump did constituted an indictable federal crime. Whether the matter was egregious is a function of the political perception that you have of the matter. And the process used in this case wasn't like it was in Nixon. There's no special counsel. There's no focus on whether the president was a crook. I hope you remember with Nixon, one of the things he said, people have to know whether the president is a crook. And he said that. I want them to know, people have to know whether the president is a crook. Well, once they found out what was going on, he was running a third-rate criminal operation.
He actually was a crook.
And he wasn't actually, breaking into one place. They were breaking into all kinds of places.
Right.
But, so we did a show on that. And, they didn't litigate the executive privilege. They just tossed a couple of witnesses in there, said this is good enough, and hurry up and rushed it through on the election year. It's timed right when there's an election year. And the process, therefore, was seen by the rival party as a sham process. It was seen as a political event. And that's kind of what Lichtman was saying. Lichtman was saying, that this is a political objective. We need to put scandal on the map. We need to do this during the election year because therefore we have a better chance at winning.
That's kind of the Democrat state of mind, probably, right? They want to bring in that scandal component.
Right. And so that is what the real legacy is here. The real legacy is this is a repudiation of type B impeachment. We have 2 types, right? In the Nixon case, what is the type?
Type A, actual crimes, actual high crimes and misdemeanors, indictable offenses.
Formal process, fair process seen as fair to both sides, overwhelming evidence that the way, Adam, in which the president was corrupt, involved serious indictable crimes, so much so that they had to run and get the guy a pardon. So it was criminally focused corruption. This is the key. For years and years and years, scholars were of the opposite view. They thought that the crimes were just secondary and that the concept of corruption was paramount. They would say to you till they were blue in the face, this impeachment is about abusing your office. But what we don't understand is that talking about abuse of office when there isn't anything to indict anyone for, now we've learned something. We've learned that criminality is paramount. You're not going to get the other party to abandon the president unless there's something that's a federal indictable offense that supports the corruption narrative. Otherwise, the corruption just gets to be talk based on your political perception versus my political perception of the event.
Then it's just back to politics, but just a political fighting. Whereas the type B is exactly that.
Yeah, so I think what we've learned and the legacy here is that impeachment must be legally centric. All right, so I want to say one more thing here about the legacy. The thing that I think people misunderstand is that it wasn't Watergate because Trump followed the law strategically, instrumentally. But Trump always does this. He's got these lawyers and he uses the law for his objectives.
To be able to toe the line.
Right.
kind of
And so like Nixon was the exact opposite. You know, somebody said that Nixon was running a third-rate criminal organization in the White House. You know, slush funds, paying people off, sicking the government on your enemies, tagging people, you know, trying to get the IRS after the liberal journalists.
He was even ordering pizzas
right,
to
the
opposition fundraisers.
Right. So he's got a whole operation, not just to break into various places, but he's got these other operations to try to interrupt the primary and who wins, whether McGovern wins or not. So this is so funny, the operation that Nixon was running. The thing that is different with Trump is Trump operates through lawyers. And so he goes to the lawyers to see what can be done and what can't be done. And he got this from, as a real estate person, how to not pay taxes. He found that the lawyers could find these loopholes, and he made aggressive use of them. And the difference here is that Trump instrumentally, strategically uses the law, where the other guy didn't do that. Trump operates through lawyers. Another issue I want to get into is the issue of checking political power. There is this idea out there that one of the things that this impeachment did is it changed our ability to check presidential power. To hear that, play clip number 50.
Sean, there's also been a lot of talk that, given this likely acquittal on Wednesday, what this means for the long-term future of government here in the U.S. We've always had the three co-equal branches of government. There is some feeling out there this now gives undue advantage to the executive branch, weakens the legislative branch. Your thoughts?
Oh, yeah, how would you answer that question? How did you answer that question on TV?
You know, there was this idea that because Type B impeachment failed, that somehow our ability to check the president is now less. I want to say to you point blank that I totally disagree with that. The thing that you have to understand is our ability to check the president remains every bit the same as it always has been prior to this event. This event did nothing to change that. And let me explain why. You had this thing called a Mueller investigation, and you will notice that Trump had the legal power to fire Mueller, to direct that Mueller be fired. And he never did. Why didn't he do that? He didn't because Lindsey Graham and the opposition party said, don't you dare fire Jeff Sessions. Jeff Sessions was the guy who appointed the special counsel.
He would have had political fracturing.
Right. There would have been political fracturing. Why? Because Mueller was looking into whether this president needs to be indicted, whether this president was a crook, whether this president had conspired with foreign powers, whether he had actually done the things that they're trying to say he did in the phone call. They actually were looking into whether there was anything indictable. And so the system worked the way the system was supposed to. I want you to understand something, Adam. A lot of people went to jail in the Trump campaign, and they went to jail because of process-related crimes. The rule of law was followed. Tell Manafort that the rule of law wasn't followed. Tell some of those people who are sitting in jail right now that the rule of law wasn't followed. Tell them that they didn't get checked. This reminds me of Iran-Contra. In Iran-Contra, Reagan had plausible deniability, but other people underneath him, like Ollie North, and these people got pinched. But the bottom line is there were convictions. So what happened in Iran-Contra is people inside the White House did get pinched on this, even though there was plausible deniability for Reagan. And so the Mueller report did check this president. The power to check this president is the same. And anybody who says that Type B impeachment somehow threatens our institutions doesn't know what they're talking about. What we really need to learn from this is Type A is the only kind of impeachment that really matters. Type B is just political perception. That's all that is.
And Type B is just trying to get that scandal factor that we saw Lichtman talking about on Bill Maher, right?
You know, I'm so happy that you just mentioned him because that's what we're going to close with. Play clip number 2.
I'm going to make another prediction. This one is not based on a system. It's just my gut. If Donald Trump wins, I predict the Republicans in Congress will impeach him. They don't want Trump as president because they can't control him. He's unpredictable. They'd love to have Pence. Absolutely, down the line, conservative, controllable Republican. And I'm quite certain Trump will give someone grounds for impeachment, either by, doing something that endangers national security because it helps his pocketbook. And by the way, he still hasn't disclosed any of those foreign loans and foreign business ties that could endanger American national security. So stay tuned. If Trump wins, watch out for that impeachment.
You just gave an example of where Trump was, quote unquote, controllable by his party because he didn't want political fracturing, and he listened.
So many of these experts are just wrong. They've misdiagnosed. The guy's an expert in politics. And by the way, he's a great scholar. I'm not criticizing him. But you have a load of people, and they misdiagnosed the Trump thing. The truth is, you can't summon a Type B impeachment and cause political fracture. What we have learned is Type B impeachment actually causes political cohesion. There's cohesion, not fracture. And so this thesis that Republicans always wanted to dump Trump is getting to be problematic. The truth is, the people who want to dump Trump, they're actually in that party. They're not very powerful. They're about as impotent as you possibly can have. I mean, CNN puts them on TV, but that's just what they do. To hear that, let's go one more with our friend Anthony Scaramucci. I think you remember this with clip number 8.
What all of us know is the obvious truth that there's a large swath of people in the Republican Party that can't stand him. There's a large swath of elected officials in Washington that think he's now completely off the rails and acting nuts. So he's got everybody scared in that party. But that spell will break, as often spells do. And so, it's just time to replace him. And so hopefully we can get somebody in there to challenge him. And I predict that the president will not run for re-election. I predict that he'll bag it the way Lyndon Johnson did.
That he'll bag it.
Another prediction.
Do you agree with this?
Well, I mean, remember, he made that prediction last summer. Remember that? I think we did a show on that. I think our first episode in season 2 was, is Trump in trouble? Because, Scaramucci was out there defecting and saying, I'm not with this guy anymore. He was a fundraiser and he's trying to get other people involved, maybe Mitt Romney. And what he predicted, his prophecy was, this guy's going to bag it. He said this, we've reached maximum. He says, we can't get any more maximum gain in Republicans than what we had over the summer. This guy now is dead weight. And some of these guys like Scaramucci would rather have Romney. And this was the thinking. The thinking was, this guy is going to bag it like Lyndon Johnson. That's what Scaramucci said. And here we are now sitting in January, end of January. He's got the highest Gallup poll he's ever had. He's got strong cohesion in the base. This thing was backfiring. It was the donations are up. There's no opponent for him. And so this whole thing, they misdiagnosed it politically. I'm a politics professor. Okay, so we're talking about political prognostication. We're talking about whether you understand the game. And what we're trying to do is show you what's going on in the game. There was this idea, let's do it in football. There was this idea that the blitz was going to defeat this offense. No, they've used a short passing game and they're running down the field now. Okay, the blitz isn't working. You gotta maybe roll the safety over, do something different, because this idea that the Republicans were going to dump Trump and that things were going to happen and that this was Watergate and blah 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 blah. Adam, it didn't happen.
Real quick, what do you think about the recent things that came from Mitt Romney? I mean, we saw that he voted with the Democrats. Was this a strategic move? And if so, do you think it's going to help him?
Romney's interesting. It's hard to diagnose it. Romney, the simple thing to say is this. I mean, the narrative always in the media, that's not right. It's always something there that you got to know what you're talking about. It's hard to really assess this other than to say this. Romney is probably playing for a post-Trump world. We're going to have a post-Trump world. Either Trump is going to win or lose this time, and then he's not going to be able to serve a third term. We all understand that. Bill Maher doesn't, and some of these people don't understand it. But we are going to reach a period when Trump is gone. It's either this election or the next. And my guess is Romney is trying to play for the long game. And where he's trying to position himself is in what the political cycle will be at the relevant time. He obviously can't run this time. Even if Trump loses, Romney can't run. So Romney's going to be looking at the election after this one. So what Romney is playing for is what that political marketplace is going to be like. He's going to
after Trump.
Yeah. And to tell you the truth, that's probably what Kasich is playing for too. The election after Trump in the Republican Party probably is going to involve Kasich. It's going to involve Romney. And then so you're probably going to have some thorny people in there who want to continue with the Trump legacy, but they're not going to be him.
Right.
And so that election, once Trump is gone, inside that party is going to be really, really interesting. And he's probably trying to play for that. And what he's really trying to play for is if he emerges from that, then he's going to look really good as this reasonable
Trying to be
Republican.
the fish swimming the other way in
Yeah.
the Republican Party, and also
Yeah.
he's reasonable. He's ethical. Is
Right,
kind of how
right,
he's talking
right.
now.
Right, he'll be reasonable. He'll look ethical to who? The Democrats, who have
Trying to reach across the aisle.
right. And so if he can just get through that fight inside the party, he's positioning. Okay, he can say that it's his religion and all that, and I'm not taking that from him. They're fine. That's fine. He says this, he says that, but I think that he's positioning himself, and he's probably wise to do that.
Do you think that they see a political fracture of the Never Trumpers? Do you think that the number of Never Trumpers is widening because of all this impeachment stuff, or do you think
The number of Never Trumpers in the Republican Party is really an island. I mean, we're talking these people have no power whatsoever, no power. So the only way they're going to get rid of Trump is to wait until this runs its course. You know, one of the nightmare scenarios for Romney is if Trump loses this time around, because then he gets to run again. That would be a nightmare scenario for Romney and the Never Trumpers. He'd stay in that party and he'd run again. Yeah. You know, so one of the things Romney's probably hoping for is this guy gets elected and finishes out, then you can say goodbye. You know, that's the only way that that's the only way the Never Trumpers really are going to get rid of him. You know?
Interesting point. Yeah. Wow. They'll just have to wait it out.
Yeah.
All right. Until next week.
Yeah.
Stay tuned for more good videos.
Good show.
Politics without allegiance. You're listening to Good Politics with Dr. Wilson and Adam Whiteman.